The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
Welcome to another edition of P.P. Simmons Radio. I'm your host, Carl Gallups. This special broadcast is airing June the 3rd, 2013, and my guest today is lead investigator Mike Zullo with the Cold Case Posse Sheriff Joe Arpaio Obama fraud case. Mike, I've asked you to come on the show today because I really would like you to clear up for our listeners and viewers this understanding of the Obama fraud Social Security number. As you know, I had Investigator Don Jeffries on my radio program, Freedom Friday, just a few days ago, and he laid out some interesting information. But of course, anytime you open up information of that kind, people have questions. So just give us everything that you know or what you'd like folks to know about the issue of the Obama Social Security number, and talk to us about the difference between real evidence and and kind of halfway evidence and prosecution evidence, and just tell us where you are and what you have and what we need to know to understand this.
Hi, Carl. I think the easiest way to deal with this is we're going to have to give a crash course maybe in what evidence actually is and the difference between evidence as being circumstantial or direct or physical evidence and what an investigational lead is. And in this big, hoopla over this revelation that Don Jeffrey brought to you, that this Social Security number information that has been supplied through various researchers that have been working on this out there in the civilian field for a couple of years now, for our purposes, is not really evidence at all. It's actually what's known as an investigative lead. And the term investigative lead refers to any information basically that could potentially aid in a successful resolution of an investigation. Investigative lead is basically the researching of databases or files with impressions of, known acts that could potentially point to some kind of fraudulent behavior or some kind of crossing databases one of another, and you end up getting further information that could potentially point you in a direction. And the biggest problem you get with this kind of stuff is people tend to look at this and they make inferences. Well, if I have this Social Security number coming to this address and this person lived there, that must mean they're using that Social Security number. And it doesn't mean that at all.
Right. It's a possibility, but it's not evidence to prosecute a potential crime.
Exactly. It just doesn't do it. And that kind of evidence, again, is not really evidence. It is a lead.
Right.
It's what points you in a direction to get that evidence. And there's different types of evidence. There's evidence that is known as like common knowledge or an indisputable fact. And for example, there are 24 hours in a day, or, a clock has numbers on it from 12 all the way back to 12. Those are common knowledge, indisputable facts. But then you get witnesses and physical evidence, direct, indirect testimony, expert testimony, opinions, document evaluation. And then there's hearsay, which is a whole nother subject entirely. Okay. But evidence is needed to prove the innocence or guilt of an individual. So evidence has to first go through a very rigorous process before it could ever be used. So there's actually books written on what's called the rules of evidence and what is needed before it could be admissible in a courtroom. So you could have evidence that is direct or circumstantial, direct being physical and circumstantial being basically a chain of events that would lead one to a logical conclusion that a certain act has happened. So physical evidence is one type. And physical evidence is basically stuff that's left, at a crime scene. To give you a great example, and Don Jeffrey shared this example with me yesterday, he says, it's like you find a broken window, and there's pieces of broken glass at the base of the window. So you would see cops pick that up, put that into a brown paper bag, and take it with them. That doesn't mean it's a burglary. Right now, all you have is broken glass.
Right.
You have to have some other corroborating factors that bring you to the conclusion that someone tried to illegally enter a residence. Otherwise, it could be nothing more than weather-related, a stone being hurled. It could be anything.
Right.
So the fact that you have broken glass just doesn't mean it was a burglary. Then you have circumstantial evidence. And like I said earlier, that's a series of events or characterizations that actually imply guilt, or they could actually imply innocence. So all these facts are collected, in a court case, and then they're tied together to help make it easier for a judge or a jury to come to a decision to either convict or not to convict someone who's on trial. And here's where the rub comes in. Circumstantial evidence, computer databases, computer runs, basically fall under circumstantial evidence. And circumstantial evidence is a lot of times a problem for prosecution because the fact of a lot of the evidence that is entered comes from computers or even in federal phone taps and information like that. And electronic data will be put through a very rigorous process before it would be deemed admissible. So simply taking a computer run off a civilian database and saying, I have crossing social security numbers, that would never pass the test for being admissible. It needs further inquiry. And that brings us to what we call corroborated evidence. And to corroborate evidence is you would take that investigational lead, and let's use a social security number. You would take that information, and like I said on one of your prior radio shows, this is where it would cost a lot of money and a lot of time. We would literally have to go down to court record houses or state records and start to pull out hard copies of documents to make sure those social security numbers even line up at some point with that residence, and then you have to find out who's the owner of that social security number. And the fact that those computer runs simply show a name and social security numbers under that name, that doesn't mean they were used by that individual. And this stuff gets really out of control. People are assuming by inference. And an inference is that leap of faith that they tie these two pieces of information together, but they leave the middle part out.
Right. Right.
You can't do that in what we do.
Right. Let me play devil's advocate just a moment for the sake of those, because I read a lot of the blogs and the questions that people ask. So if Barack Obama is using a Social Security number, right now it's one of the most famous numbers, I guess, in the world. It's all over the internet. If he's using that number, and when that number is run in databases, it comes back registered to Harrison J. Bonell, for example. All right, now, from a law enforcement perspective, what does that mean to you? What can be done with that? Does that mean a crime has been committed?
No, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything that a crime has been committed to us. We don't know the databases that these people are using. We have no idea on how they are processing their information. When they come out and say, we have a database and it shows 150 different social security numbers. Well, we don't know how that information is acquired. We don't know the accuracy of that information. We don't know if someone at some point in time may have picked up Mr. Brunel's social security number and used it. But it doesn't mean Barack Obama used it. We don't know. And my understanding is there is no government agency that has confirmed, and this would be part of the corroboration, that has confirmed that social security number is in fact his, was his, and was ever used by him. I understand that this is nothing more than one of those database runs. And we don't have the ability to go out there and pound on the door of Social Security and demand this kind of information.
Right. Now I do know that, of course, the focus of your investigation is on the fraudulent forged document, and you've got almost 2 years of work involved in that, and you have a 100%, you believe, and so do the law enforcement officers and congressmen and the attorneys that looked at it at the sheriff's convention. You believe you've got a 100% airtight case, a criminal case. So this is enough to take perhaps to a congressional investigation, and isn't it so that in a congressional investigation of this document forgery, then other questions would necessarily be asked, like why would he need to present a forged document? And by the way, what Social Security number is he using and to whom does it belong? So it's possible that as we move forward in perhaps a congressional investigation of the forged document, a crime that we know has been committed, it's possible that the Social Security number could become an issue in that investigation. Is that correct, or am I off base?
It may actually come down to that. We focused on, and we looked at a lot of this stuff, and we focused on, obviously, the birth certificate because that was the focus of what we were asked to do, but it is also a document, or for lack of a better word, a piece of evidence that has, a wealth of evidentiary value contained within it. And if you look at the way that we had to do this, when we started this investigation on that, we took a lot of information that was given to us. Those are investigational leads. Mr. Corsi's work was nothing more than investigational leads. Then we ran it through a filtering process where I convened 11 different people in there with different, expertise and professional expertise. And we put the document through its tests, and we came to the conclusion, yes, there's something wrong with this. This most likely is a forgery. But we didn't come out and say that we definitely have it right here and stop. We kept going. We did even more analysis. We did more work on that document. And then when it was time that I was 100% convinced that this was airtight, we sought a forensic document examiner for expert testimony.
Right.
That's what you need.
Right.
To make it work. And none of that has been done in the Social Security runs. Right. And let me just tell you one other thing, and I'm not going to name the individual, but we received an email yesterday where this individual is a big player in the Social Security number thing. And this individual actually agreed with us and then went on to state that they kept this way, pushing the Social Security issue just to keep the issue alive.
Wow. So this person agreed with you. Everything that you've just said in this radio interview, they were agreeing that it's not really enough for a criminal case, but they were pushing it anyway just to keep it alive, right?
Right. And this is something we've encountered in this investigation. And this is why when people say, I've sent you all my information, everything you got was from me, I'm going to tell you right now, that's nonsense.
Right.
That's nonsense. And I didn't take everybody's information. I wouldn't take everybody's information because, to be honest with you, I don't need everybody's information to figure this out.
Right. And what I've discerned is there are a lot of people out there looking for glory, looking for fame, looking for recognition, rather than really caring about a real criminal investigation and evidence collecting process. On the other hand, you guys are professional lawmen, and you're doing a professional lawman's job, and that's all you are concerned with is actual, hard, factual, corroborated evidence so that you might push an investigative criminal case, particularly before Congress, correct?
Correct. And Carl, your folks have to realize, this isn't going to municipal court or before Judge Judy. Right. This is not something that, you're going to, if that's what you think this is, you're sadly mistaken. And there have been over 20 some odd civil prosecutions lost for various reasons. But I would challenge everybody that wants to come against my investigator, number one, a 25-year veteran of a police department, a seasoned background investigator. I would challenge you to do this. If you think you're right and I'm wrong on this issue, take all your information, put it in a nice package, put a big bow on it, and bring it to your local prosecutor or your local attorney general, present it to them, and tell them you want them to prosecute this, and then you call me and tell me what they tell you, because I'm not the amazing Kreskin. I'm going to tell you what they're going to tell you. Yeah. You don't have anything here. Right. That's what they're going to say.
Right. And if they are able to prosecute it and bring it to full prosecution, you would be happy about it, and you would come back and I would come back and say, well, we're sorry, we were wrong on that. But you don't think that's going to happen, do you?
No, I don't. I can tell you in my own experience how many times I was turned around from a prosecutor and said, hey, this is all nice stuff you got here, but go get me this, and this, and then come and talk to me.
Right. Mike, listen, we're slap out of time. We're going to have to conclude this segment, but perhaps we can have you on for another segment very soon. But just 30 seconds, is there anything you'd like to say to wrap this up, put a bow on it?
Well, I think the thing that people have to understand is we are in a criminal process. This is how we work. And our standard of evidence, the hurdles that we need to clear are a lot higher. And it is not what you think.
Yeah.
Just because you see something, especially on a computer, doesn't mean it means what you want it to mean.
Doesn't mean you have a criminal case. Mike Zullo, God bless you. Thank you. We'll have you back. Thank you for giving us this very important update. Folks, you are listening to PP Simmons Radio. Your host, Carl Gallups. Stay tuned to PP Simmons. We'll have more interviews just like this. God bless you.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.